Time to ask this, Tell. Somebody calls me Tell. It's rare that, but thank you. First of all, big up to TFT. Love the show. Been on here for the past 3 years. What do you think of Trossard for Havertz in AF11? What does AF11 mean?
Arsenal's first 11.
Oh, Arsenal's first 11. There we go. Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually think that Fabio Vieira came in and did a very good job for him. I think Trossard, you could definitely look at starting him. I think he's a very, very talented player indeed. What have you made of Arsenal's start to the season? And do you think they're ready, Steve, for the Champions League, Premier League combination ahead?
Who, Arsenal?
Yeah.
What, are they ready for both?
Yeah, to compete in both and do well in both in your eyes.
I don't know. They only had the Premier League last year, and they didn't do that. So they said they were going to. Oh, we got one comp and City are in everything, and they're going to struggle. I think they find it tough. They struggled when they were in the Europa League. They got knocked out of Sporting Lisbon, I believe. They'll beat PSV tonight. I think PSV are okay, but they'll beat them tonight. And I don't know. I think when it gets later on in the competition and FA Cup, things like that start kicking in, that's when you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to watch them. I mean, I think they're better this season than they were last year. I think they look more controlled. I think they're leaking less opportunities on goal. If they beat Spurs at the weekend, and I mean, Spurs fans are very, very adamant they're going to win. The majority that have been on the terrace have all stated, we will beat Arsenal at the Emirates. Our football's too good. We're better than them this year. 5 games in, and I think Postecoglou's doing a good job. But I think Arsenal will win that match, which actually means that in their opening 6 games, it's actually points-wise 1 point better than they were last year. And some of their fans have been kicking off so much about how poor a start to the campaign it has been. I don't think it has been at all. I actually like how they look more reserved. They look a little bit more controlled, as I say. And it's like every game doesn't feel like it's frenetic. And it reminds me more of Man City. It reminds me more of you. I think your football so far this season has been better than them. But you guys just tend to start off a little slower, a little bit more conservative, reserving that energy for later on in the season and picking things up when it matters. And they're not at your level yet. They're not, because of your consistency and what you've achieved and what you have won and that winning mentality that is bred from that. And of course, your manager is not just the best in the world. He's definitely in the top 3 managers of all time. And probably, as much as I love Fergie, could go down as the greatest ever. And it's actually nice, by the way, to hear Pep this week when he was asked that question. Basically, I think he said Johan Cruyff.
It was Cruyff.
Fergie and somebody else. He just said, those guys are the greatest. And it was kind of nice to hear, because there's a lot of nonsense said about Fergie in the last few years by pundits, not even by City fans, by pundits, about how Fergie weren't even that good. And it made me feel a little bit sick. It really did. It was like, how can you even have that opinion? And City fans, young City fans might not get this, but in 20 years' time, if someone tries saying that about Pep, you'll get it. But yeah, I think Arsenal got a really good chance in the Champions League this year. They're not in the top 2 or 3 favourites, but I've put them in that, what I call the underclass. So I think you're the outright favourites to win it, because I think you're the best team in the world by a country mile. Then I've got Bayern and Real Madrid that are like the next 2. And then under that, I've got Arsenal, Napoli, PSG, and there's another team. I now forget who they are. Who were they? I was thinking about them yesterday. There's somebody else. But I put all those teams kind of in that category, because they don't really have a huge Champions League pedigree, but they are very good teams. Does that make sense? And they could do some damage in this tournament. So, yeah, I'm going to be intrigued to see how they handle it, how the manager rotates, because the Europa League's so hard to judge, because he'd rotate so many players for those games. You're never going to do that in the Champions League, if that makes sense.
No, you're not. You've got to get a fine balance and that's what Pep's good at. See, last season, Haaland get a hat-trick, takes him off, everyone's going mad. And it's like, it's not about that. You know what I mean? It's about getting the job done, not about personal things, get players rested. Rodri plays a lot of minutes. As soon as he gets a chance to replace him, give him a break. Gundogan last year as well. And I believe Pep's got that squad rotation and management off to a T. And I think City are very good at it. Arteta's got to do the same. You know, the problem is when you do it and it backfires and you lose, everyone goes mad because they say you should be playing your best team. But it don't work like that. If you've got the eye on other things, and there'll come a point in the season, he might be at a bit of a crossroads. If they're in all competitions, you might have to prioritise one or two over another one, and that's when you get the problem. I've seen it before. City's gone into an FA Cup semi-final against Liverpool one year, but we had Real Madrid on the Tuesday. So we had to put a weekend side out at Wembley. We got beat. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. We sacrificed it and we had to go for Real Madrid. But I don't know. Arsenal are I think that they're just happy they're in it. I've seen loads of jazz on social media today. I've seen like announcement videos and that. You know, I thought they'd signed Mbappe, but it was just a video telling everyone Arsenal were back in the Champions League. So I thought that was a bit weird. But yeah, let's see. Yeah,
they're going to be an interesting one. And what do you make of the weekend? Because Spurs fans are very confident going into this game, the North London derby. I think Arsenal fans have almost been a bit reserved on the conversation because they've got this Champions League game ahead. How do you see the North London derby going?
I think Tottenham fans are confident because, you know, that Harry Kane's gone now. They're not that team anymore, the Harry Kane team. They're their own team. Ange's playing his own football. But it's early days, you know what I mean? Arsenal are a good side. We've seen Arsenal against Fulham struggle, but we've seen Tottenham at weekend. They played good football, but they were 1-0 down to Sheffield United for a long time. If they're 1-0 down to Arsenal, they don't claw that back late. You know what I mean? So it'd be interesting to see. I'm just going to watch it as a neutral. Obviously, I've got a lot of friends at Arsenal. I've got a lot of friends at Tottenham. So I'm just going to sit down and watch it and see where both the teams are at. But I wouldn't even like to predict it, to be honest.
I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. I agree. I get why Spurs fans are confident. Do you think what you're seeing with Spurs, do you think it's sustainable and they're going to grow from this? Or do you believe maybe Spurs are getting a little bit ahead of themselves in terms of how good they really are?
They've not had a lot to share about Tottenham, to be honest. They've had Mourinho, they had Conte. I mean, so they're probably just feeling a bit refreshed that they're seeing decent football. They probably thought, Harry Kane's gone, this could be a shit show. But it hasn't. It's been pleasantly okay. So I know that Ange managed Yokohama Marinos in Japan, and they were City's team. We bought them. And he was in the City group, and I know a lot of people at the club were saying how good of a manager he was and how good of a guy and his philosophy he was and that. He went to Celtic. I know you can't judge it by Celtic, but he did okay. And I think a few Tottenham fans wasn't overly keen when he joined because they said, oh, he's not this big name and he's doing it at Celtic, but he didn't do it, here, there. But the guy's a breath of fresh air. I like him. I think he speaks a lot of sense. I think he's got his philosophy on the team early doors. They're playing good football. A couple of players have been rejuvenated. That's the sign of a good manager when you see players that you thought were finished all of a sudden get a new lease of life. That's when you know that he's brought something extra to the club. He's brought something that we can't see. So the training might have been a bit stale. The club might have been a bit, not a great place to work. He looks like he's come in there. You've seen him in press conferences, you've seen him turn up in interviews, and he's quite positive and that. And fair play to him, you know what I mean? Fair play to him. But Arsenal at the Emirates, it's not an easy place to go. It's a derby as well. I'm actually just looking forward to it. But I think Tottenham are on the up. I think they are on the up, and I think they've just got to be patient with him. They've got to give him the funds, and they've got to slowly build. And I think another couple of seasons, and going in the right direction, backing him the way they are, they might be there.
I agree with that. I actually think, I said to a few Spurs fans the other day, I think what you need to do is stop putting unnecessary pressure on him and your team by talking about smashing Arsenal at the Emirates or we're going to be in the title race this year. Because typically for Spurs, when things have gone wrong is when the pressure mounts. So why create a pressure cooker that the media are not putting on you, rivals are not placing on you? Just stay back in the shadows and just stay quiet. And as a kid, I remember when my dad used to have friends over. I used to love, as a kid, I don't know, about 10, 11 years old, when my dad's friends were around, they were having a few drinks, and they were just talking. I used to love sort of sitting and listening to it. But I'd always like chip in and say something or laugh at something. My dad would notice I was still up and go, right, bedtime. And then I remember he said to me once, if you just stay quiet, I wouldn't have known you were there and you'd have got to stay up longer. Sometimes in life, just keep quiet and it serves you much better than opening your mouth. There's a comment here that made me laugh, though, Steen. He's like, Terry, what were you going to say if Spurs win, Terry? Well, I'll probably say congratulations. I'll probably say well done. I'll probably say you deserved it, because normally that's the case. That's what I'll say. Well, amazing. You beat a fantastic team at their home ground. I'll praise them. I never not praise teams that deserve praise. What will happen with Sancho? Arsenal next? I don't see him going to Arsenal, to be fair. Tottenham and Newcastle were said to be interested. That's Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund as well, but that was pushed down. The German press today have said that's not true. So I doubt it will be Arsenal, personally. I think
he needs a manager that is going to spend a bit of time with him. He's obviously got problems off the field. He needs somebody that's going to put their arm around him and look after him, because we know he's a fantastic player, but there's just something not right there, and he's got to pick his next club very carefully, because the people around him need to choose the right path for him to go on, because at the minute he's well off it, and that's good. We need him for England because he was fantastic for England. We need him back in the Premier League, but Man United's not the club for him. It's not worked out there. I think that relationship's gone. He needs to go somewhere and just get back on football, focus on football. But I think he's a deeper rooted problem from just football. So I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I hope him. I wish him all the best. Personally, I want him to do well. I want him to perform. I want him to deliver. I really do. I just don't personally see it being at Man United. I actually think he needs to leave the UK. I think he'll do better in an environment where there's less attention on him, personally. But there we go.